My name is Liv and I'm SEO Lead here at Digitaloft. And my talk is very catchily titled The Ultimate Guide to Never Writing Another Ultimate Guide. So what we're going to talk about today is really planning an e-commerce content strategy that's got some real impact behind it. And I think anyone who's worked in SEO, copywriting, content writing has fallen into that writing an ultimate guide trap, which we're going to talk a little bit about shortly. But we're going to start with a bit of a home truth, maybe a shock to some people, may not be a shock, but that is that most e-commerce blogs are a little bit shit. And I think there's a lot of reasons behind this. I think there's a lot of reasons why e-commerce blog strategies can be massively, massively improved. I think one of those elements that makes it not that great is that we rely too heavily on what I'm going to call the ultimate guide method. So that is your ultimate guide to insert really vague, widespread topic here. And it's easily done, particularly a couple of years ago, sort of within the SEO industry. That was pretty much all I seemed to produce. So far be it from me to call out other companies, I've decided to call out myself and give a selection of ultimate guides that I have written in my copywriting career gone past. But that's not just the reason that these ultimate guides are a little bit shit. They sort of tend to try and cover everything without ever really saying very much at all. It leads to confusion for users, it leads to confusion for Google, and doesn't do very much to support the user journey, rankings, or any of the other amazing benefits of having a great informational content strategy. And so when I say most e-commerce blogs are a little bit shit, what I mean by that is the blog strategy as a whole, so not the individual blogs here, only focus on one stage of the user funnel. So they might just focus really on that sort of top of the funnel in sort of discovery stage, and then not focus at sort of down at that conversion stage, or vice versa. There's little thought for how they fit into sort of a wider customer journey. They contribute very little to sort of wider commercial or marketing goals. They're created in a silo, so are completely separate from any other marketing channels that you may have. They're created based on some sort of vague notion of topical authority. I think topical authority is hugely, hugely important when we come to talk about blog and content strategies, but it's very misunderstood and it's sort of created around the vague, we need to create lots of blogs for topical authority, whatever that may mean. And there are just repetitions of other content that's on the internet. And because of that, they don't provide any value to the user. And they're created really purely just for SEO. Again, whatever that may mean. And it's not just me and us saying this. This comes from a study from Ahrefs, which has looked at over 14 billion pages to say that 96.5% of pages on Google get absolutely zero traffic. So that in this study was 13.6 billion pages getting absolutely zero visits. So it's only a very, very tiny portion of the internet that gets any kind of significant amount of traffic. And what this tells us is, A, there's a lot of really crappy content out on the internet and that people need to be doing better. And B, it means that you really have to go above and beyond to stand out. Ranking isn't actually that easy. You need to be able to prove that you are adding genuine value to the reader above what is already out there. And Beth mentioned at the start of this summit that Digitaloft have been putting together our State of E-commerce SEO report. Like we said, it is open for further submissions, so we'll send around that link as well. I've got a QR code at the end. But one of the insights that we've seen so far is that 84% of SEOs who work on e-commerce sites are regularly producing blog content as part of their e-commerce SEO strategy. So this really, really highlights the fact that if you're producing blog content, it's going to be a really saturated market. chances are that all of your competitors are doing the same. There's going to be crossover in terms of topics, and you need to be going above and beyond to stand out. And we've not just stopped there. We've also done a survey of over 2,000 consumers. And this has revealed that about 64% of responders have bought a product from a website after reading informational content from a brand. So this sort of dispels a bit of a myth that's going around that blog content is dead, it's redundant. Of course, there's so much more research being done on social media platforms and things like TikTok, but your blog content can work hard for you if you've got the right strategy behind it. So I've sort of summarized a little bit of why I think most e-commerce blog strategies are a little bit rubbish. How can we make them less so? There are many common traps that I often see blogs, particularly e-commerce blogs, falling into. And I'm going to talk through 5 of these most common traps, why I think they're occurring, and what we can do to really counteract them. And the first trap that I see people falling into is people don't fully understand the purpose of an e-commerce blog. Blog posts bring in a whole multitude of benefits from a lot of angles, from SEO and way beyond as well. So with a really well-crafted blog strategy, you can build your brand persona. You can answer some really key customer questions. You can, of course, bring in organic traffic and therefore revenue. You can encourage conversions if you put conversion rate optimization as sort of a core focus for you. And you can boost the rankings of priority categories and products. And I think it's this final one, so the boosting rankings for priority categories, that is often a little bit misunderstood. But when done properly, an e-commerce blog strategy can showcase experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So those all important EEAT signals around a topic. And it can build topical authority, which is what I mentioned earlier. So by talking regularly about a topic, by having plenty of supporting informational content that's all well linked to your core priority categories, you can build that association that you are a business who is highly, highly authoritative and expert within your niche. You can highlight, like I said, products and category pages that are really valuable and important via a very well thought through internal linking strategy. You can drive traffic, obviously, to your revenue driving pages, particularly if you're considering that conversion rate optimization again. And you can earn valuable backlinks directly to your blog pages, which can then, of course, pass authority onto your priority pages if you're linking to them. And I think particularly for an e-commerce blog, informational content is as much about supporting your revenue driving pages from a rankings perspective as it is about drawing in traffic of its own. The second trap that I'm going to talk through is the trap that people fall into where blog strategies look to be created almost solely off of keyword research alone. Obviously, keyword research is a wonderful, wonderful tool to be able to help us prioritize our strategies. But I like to use the stat that 1 in 5 searches on Google are being searched for the very first time. They are completely unique. And if you're relying solely on keyword research to create a strategy, and that applies more broadly, not just for blog content, you're missing out on so many valuable topics and all of the zero volume keywords that you may be ignoring otherwise. A successful e-commerce blog strategy really needs to understand its audience inside out. So if you look at product reviews, what features do people absolutely rave about? And likewise, what do they really not like about your product? What questions are they asking your customer service teams? Do they have particular concerns about the longevity of your product, how to store it, how to maintain it? If you know what those specific questions are, you can create content that answers those questions before they even arise. What are they searching on platforms like Reddit? and what are their pain points. I used to work for an educational company, and the things that people were Googling, the things that teachers were Googling were so different to the honest level of honesty that they gave on Reddit and similar Facebook groups as well. What's the main reason that people are reluctant to try your product? What are those sticking points? And if you understand those, you can again create content that's gonna help you to mitigate that risk of someone not trying your product at all. You can say, what else is going on in their lives? What are their priorities? How much time do they have? I saw a really nice talk at Brighton SEO by Sophie Coley from PropellerNet, who used AI to generate full, really in-depth audience personas. This was from a digital PR perspective. I love the idea of being able to do the same from an SEO perspective to really understand the people that are going to be reading your content. And what questions are coming in on TikTok, other social media? What comments are people asking? And similarly for this, you can use social media, you can use TikTok trends, Google trends, Pinterest trends to understand what is trending in your industry and what new topics are going to come out very soon. So as an example, we work with a cosmetics retailer, a sort of aesthetics clinic, and there are so many things that come out on Google Trends that are really trending surgeries or treatments that have never even been searched on Google yet. The third trap I'm going to chat through is that you're creating blogs that you don't really need. And many people creating blog strategies are still falling into the trap of thinking that more equals better. And this can often take one of two forms. The sort of first mini trap, I'm going to call it, is creating lots of little blogs that should just be one big blog. But people also go the other way and cast their net far too wide and create content that's actually just irrelevant to the site. Looking at that first trap, creating blogs that don't need to be blogs is an issue because you can see cannibalization problems. You can see duplicated or thin content. And you can also see confusion for users and search engines. So as an example, if you're an online pharmacy, you might be wondering how to know if you need separate blogs to target side effects of aspirin, aspirin dosage, can you give aspirin to dogs? All things that people are Googling. Do you need individual blogs for these, or could it be one much wider guide? If you Google your target keywords or pop them into a keyword clustering tool such as Keyword Insights, you will be able to see just that. This will tell you if two keywords need to be separate blogs or if they can be answered by one much longer guide. And this is the approach that ultimate guide tactic tries to employ, but doesn't quite get right. Blogs can target multiple keywords, but just not absolutely everything about an entire topic. And then on the alternate side, we see people casting their net way too wide and creating irrelevant content, which can then cause a lack of focus, a dilution of authority and EEAT signals, and confusion for both users and search engines. So a lot of sites fall into the trap of creating content that is very vaguely related to their niche. So for example, if you've got a car insurance company that's posting a guide to next year's Formula One drivers in the hope that it's going to earn them some kind of topical authority and say, look, we talk about cars, we should be ranking highly for car insurance. It's not quite linked enough. And this dilutes the focus of the site and can bring in irrelevant traffic, which can also negatively impact engagement signals. So if you've got loads of people coming onto this blog, but all then immediately exiting again, it's going to paint the site in a negative light. And one thing that we found out in the Google documentation leak of May this year was the existence of a site focus score, which denoted the extent to which a site remains focused on one core topic. We don't know sort of to what extent Google uses this attribute or how much, and whether it's included in rankings, but the fact that it's measured tells us that it is something that Google pays attention to. And as an e-commerce site, your blog's focus should always be on your product. So you can always ask yourself when you're looking at blog content, how does this link back to my product? So this means product and user guides, gift guides, roundups, showcasing features and how they fix common customer issues, cleaning, maintenance, aftercare, and storage advice to make sure that you're supporting your users at every single stage of their buying journey. My fourth trap that I see people falling into is that blog content exists in a void. It just exists as a single silo. Making blog content work harder means making it multitask. So once you've created blog content, it can be repurposed for a lot of channels. It can be repurposed for digital PR. And if you're creating really valuable blog content, it should be good enough to gain some natural backlinks too, depending on the topic. It can be repurposed for email marketing to provide that genuine value to users. It can be repurposed for social media if you've made it engaging enough. And it can be repurposed for customer service teams. So customer service teams might be able to point people in the direction of your blog if it's answering those key customer questions. I always like to use this as a good quality benchmark for blog content of would this blog get shared via social media or email? And I think this is really important, particularly if you work in an agency. Often it feels like there's a disconnect between an SEO agency and other internal teams. But if you've got internal teams, internal social media teams who want to share your content online, that's a really good sign that you're hitting the mark when it comes to relevance of your content, hitting the tone of voice right, and making sure that you're providing genuine value, not just doing it for SEO. And then my fifth and final trap that I'm going to talk through today is that you create content and then you just forget about it. And it's also just really bad. And I want to talk through an example that we've worked on here at Digitaloft. So I'm a big believer that making your blog content valuable means regularly auditing it. So this was a website that came to us for a one-off SEO audit project in August this year. The site had thousands and thousands of pages, including a large amount of blog content that had never been audited. I found blog content that was published when I was 10 years old, when I was in primary school. That was how out of date this content was. It wasn't super relevant. There were blogs that were about 3 lines long. It was in some very serious need of an audit. So we took our content audit framework of looking through each page of the site and deciding whether we wanted to keep it, whether we wanted to improve it, whether it needed to be merged with another page, or if we wanted to delete it altogether. And we handed back some recommendations, and the big part of our recommendations was deleting over 300 pieces of informational content. And this was content like the stuff that was produced in the early 2000s. There was lots of blog content related to COVID. There was trends to look for in 2007. Plenty of content that was no longer relevant and no longer needed on the site. So we recommended for this all to be deleted, as well as improving the content that was left on the site. That deletion piece was completed in mid-September, and I absolutely love looking at the Search Console graph now. The company is still working on improving some of the existing content, and the main thing that has been done now is purely that deletion of informational content, and we see traffic going up and up and up. And something that I don't think we talk about enough is that poor quality content is most likely doing more harm than good to your website. Another thing that stuck out from Google's documentation leak in May was the existence of a quality boost signal. And this looked at your site's overall quality. So rather than looking at it on a page-by-page basis, it told us that Google also looks at site quality holistically. And one thing that indicated to me was that if your site is littered with poor quality content that's out of date, not relevant, that gets no traffic. So for this example before, over 90% of the blog pages had received less than 50 page views from all sources, not just organic, in the last 12 months. That's sort of how poor the quality was. If your site is littered with this kind of content, it may be harming the visibility of your most valuable pages, the pages that are doing well. It may be holding them back. So I think what this tells us is if a blog is not receiving meaningful traffic, it's simply not working hard enough. And from this point, when you get to the point of content audit, you can decide if you want to delete it or you can decide if you want to improve it. I would consider deleting a blog post if it's never performed well, it's just never ever taken off, it's out of date, it's no longer relevant. But if you're confident that a blog is needed, you can work to improve its quality. You can bring it up to date with the most relevant information. You can include key insights from your internal expert, and you can go above and beyond what is already ranking. But poor quality content is a really, really common issue. And poor quality content might look like content that doesn't answer the user's question, or if it doesn't answer it well enough. I saw a lot of content on that blog where the title would be a question, and I'd have to go about 3 or 4 paragraphs in to actually get an answer. I think that was quite a common tactic in SEO about 5 years ago. Content that offers a really poor user experience. It's content that copies what's on the internet, almost word for word. There's content with really poor internal linking. And by that, I mean too much. I've definitely seen a lot of sites with too much internal linking, none at all, or just poorly thought through with irrelevant anchor text, for example. And content that doesn't prioritize information gain, which I'm going to chat through on the next slide. And one extra thing that we learned from that documentation leak in May is that Google is using large language models to estimate the effort that is going into article pages. And this forms part of its overall page quality score. Now, we don't know exactly what Google is using to measure effort, but it's most likely to what extent have you gone above and beyond what is already ranking to provide genuine value to the reader. And we see a lack of focus on informational gain in SEO at the moment, and it's becoming an increasingly important issue. So when I talk about information gain, I talk about how unique your content is compared to what's already ranking. Now, when I started in SEO, everyone was talking about the skyscraper method, how to be able to rank. You need to look at what is ranking number 1 and make it expertise isn't just going to sort of magically present itself to you. You need to be able to hunt for this expertise. You need to use quotes from your internal experts and speak to any internal teams who you might be able to use for unique insights. So let's have a little recap. I began this presentation by telling you that most e-commerce blogs are a little bit shit. I stand by that. And there's a few reasons for this. This comes from lack of understanding, so not knowing what the real purpose of blog content is. It comes from an over-reliance on keyword research, so not thinking outside the box to get true audience insight or to look at what's trending. It comes from creating unnecessary volumes of content, so either spreading your net too far and creating content that's not really relevant, or creating like 5 blogs when it should have just been 1. The reason is keeping blog content in a silo and not using it within other marketing channels to make it work harder. And ignoring old content. So just leaving publishing content and thinking that is your job done. You never need to check on it again. And there's a handful of principles that I think really, really underpin an effective e-commerce blog strategy. And we need to understand that informational content is also there to support rankings for revenue-driving pages. We need to prioritize content quality, information gain, and showcasing EEAT signals. You need to be staying on top of content quality with regular audits. You need to keep it relevant to your business and your product. You can think about how to support users at every single stage of their buying journey. And you can work to make your content work harder across every single channel. And that is it from me. As I said earlier, there's still time to complete Digitaloft's State of SEO survey. There's a QR code here, but I know Beth's also got a link at the end and it'll be sent in the follow-up emails as well.